Welcome to This Week from Blue Mountain Broadcasting. I'm your host, Linnell Ellis, the president of Blue Mountain Broadcasting Association, and I'm very glad that you've tuned in today. Today on the show, I'm going to be interviewing Randy Bates, who's the president and CEO of the Quiet Hour Ministries. Really looking forward to my conversation with him. And also have some station news to share with you. First of all, though, we're going to spend some time thinking about our relationship with God. And I wanted to start by talking to you about what's going on for me this week. I'm actually in the midst of the intensive for the Master of Arts in Cinema, Religion, and Worldview. So here at the Center for Media Ministry, where I have my regular job besides my volunteer work at Blue Mountain Broadcasting Association, we are working with our students on their summer intensive as they're learning to connect visual storytelling for the sake of God's kingdom and for the gospel. And I'm teaching a class during this summer intensive for these students, and the class is called Foundational Narratives. And in that class, students are looking at Christian theology, they're looking at Seventh-day Adventist beliefs specifically, and they're looking at the formative narratives or stories that have shaped their life and experience. And so one of the things that I asked each student in the class to do was to think of a story from their childhood that had really had a foundation for, created a foundation for them, had an impact on the way they think about life, about the way they view God and life and other people, and asked them to share that story. So I thought since they were doing that, I probably should share one as well. And the narrative that I shared is actually a story from the Old Testament. And the reason that I picked this is because it's one of the earliest Bible stories that I can ever remember hearing. It's the story of Joseph, and some of you might be familiar with these books, and they're books that I grew up with as a kid, and in here is a story called Joseph's New Coat. And there's also another one that follows right after it called Joseph and His Brothers. And these stories had such an impact on me. My mother would read them to me over and over, and I'll never forget these pictures of Joseph in Egypt and that sort of thing. And the story of what happened to Joseph that you're probably pretty familiar with, but that he had these dreams, and he told his brothers about them, and that didn't make him very popular, and they threw him in the pit, and then they sold him into slavery into Egypt. And here he is, he's a teenager, maybe about 17 years old, going off to be a slave in Egypt. And then once he gets there, he runs into some trials at Potiphar's house, etc., but always makes the right choice. And in addition to hearing it from this book, about the same time, I was listening to a dramatic retelling of this story on a record, an LP, that my parents purchased for our family. And there's actually a whole series called The Bible in Living Sound that tell these Bible stories. And we didn't have a lot of money, so instead of buying the whole set, my parents would buy individual records as they came on sale as sort of surplus at the Seventh-day Adventist bookstores, at camp meetings, and that sort of thing. And so gradually we added stories into the set of records that we had. And one of the very first ones, if not the first, was the story of Joseph. And so I truly cannot remember a time growing up when I didn't know the story of Joseph from this book and from these records that we had. And you know, the character of Joseph just impressed me. It stood out to me. He was so loyal to God and faithful and made the right choices even under very, very difficult circumstances. And of course, what could be a more epic story really than the story of Joseph? A kid who goes from being the favorite son to being almost killed and then sold as a slave and then also imprisoned, but eventually rises to this position of honor and responsibility and power in the most powerful nation at the time, Egypt. And there he is right next to Pharaoh when his brothers have to come to him asking for food in the time of the famine. It's just an amazing narrative by any standards. Wouldn't it make an epic movie? That is what I've been thinking since I was a little kid. In fact, one of my lifelong dreams has been to be somehow involved in a dramatic retelling at the highest quality level of this powerful story as it was made into a film. So I'm kind of guessing that at this point in my life that dream is unlikely to be fulfilled, but it's still out there in my mind as something that should really, really happen. And I suppose I'd be just thrilled if someone who is making such a project would allow me to just come and hand out water to the people on the crew. I would be delighted to do it. But, you know, what I've been thinking about as I've been preparing for this class that I'm teaching now is that these foundational narratives, these stories that are in our past, like the story of Joseph, are really important to us as humans and as Christians. Reading about the characters in the Bible can truly inspire us, or in many cases can provide a warning for us. These stories help shape who we are and how we live. And I would like to challenge you to think about stories, biblical or otherwise, that have been in your family, that have shaped who you are today. That's what my students have been doing as they've been preparing for this class they're taking. We all have stories and biblical principles that underpin who we are, how we understand God, and what we do. These stories are important. They shape us. And I certainly am grateful for good foundational narrative stories like the ones my parents shared with me when I was young, stories like the story of Joseph. Please stay tuned. I'll be right back. Welcome back. Joining me now is Randy Bates, President and CEO of Quiet Hour Ministries. Randy, it is so good to have you here.
Well, no, it is so good to see you again.
I know, I haven't seen you in quite some time.
Yeah.
You are a Walla Walla original.
Yes, we moved here in 1964 and lived here till 2001. So
Yes. Now I've been in California.
Yes,
Since
for
then.
about 20 years now.
Mm-hmm. And your role at Quiet Hour Ministries, I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, that's been an interesting journey, Linnell. As I went to California, I had no idea what I was going to do. And God had plans, as He always does. And we found out Quiet Hour had an opening, and I fit what they were needing. And as they say, the rest is history. Now I serve Quiet Hour as its president and CEO. Had that role for about 5 years now. And I'm really enjoying it. I never would have thought that, but I am really enjoying the opportunity that I get to travel a little bit, to meet people all over the world, work together in spreading the gospel. And we have an amazing team at Quiet Hour that I get to work with. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Quiet Hour goes back, has a history. What time? When did it start? What year?
We started in 1937, so we celebrated our 83rd birthday in July of this year. 83 years of ministry. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And I know there have been a lot of aspects of the ministry. Maybe you could talk about where the focus is mostly now, and maybe a little bit about where it's come from.
Sure. We started as a radio program, moved into television, and then into international evangelism. And that's where our focus is right now, is international evangelism. Partnering together with people all over the world in sharing our faith in their community. And Quiet Hour has kind of a unique method of doing that, in that we don't just come in and do our thing and leave, but we start with asking them, what do you need? What's going to be effective in your community, in your culture? And then we partner together with the local people and share our faith. And it's just been really, really amazingly successful.
So that's being tuned in then to the various cultures wherever you're going to work.
Yes.
Sounds a lot more effective than just having your standard thing that you impose.
Yes, we actually work together with them where there are local gospel workers that are working 3 months before our team even arrives, and then continue working for a couple months after our team leaves. So it's not just kind of a splash and dash.
Yes.
But that we actually have a long-term commitment there in the community to really make a difference.
Where are some of the places that you've been working recently?
We've been in Cuba quite a bit. We have also been in Africa, in Ethiopia, in Kenya. We've got a trip coming up next year in Malawi. We have Colombia, Peru, South and Central America. We've got one in Ukraine. So we've had quite a few interesting places to go.
Mm-hmm. And you've traveled, I'm sure, quite a bit.
I have. I have gotten to go and preach and be a team leader, and it's an amazing experience. It truly is.
things have been really different, and I suppose it would be strange if we didn't mention that 2020 is not your normal year for traveling. What has that meant for the Quiet Hour?
Well, it started out with us having 15 mission trips planned for the year, and the first mission trip of the year was in March. And it was mid-March when the State Department said, if you're an American and you're out of the country and you want to be home, you need to get home now or plan on staying where you are. Well, we had 37 people on 2 mission teams in Pilan and Niquero, Cuba, which is the very far western end of the island. And the only flights out of Cuba were out of Havana, which is the complete other end of the island. So we had to bring our team home early. We had to schedule flights that got canceled and rebooked and canceled and rebooked. We had to put them on a bus and bus them for an 8-hour bus ride across Cuba to get to Havana Airport and then fly home. The team was supposed to have their last meeting Sabbath evening, and they ended up actually getting on a plane, and everybody was back in the United States safe and sound by the end of Sabbath. Wow. But it was a very intense and prayer-filled session as we fought to bring those people home in time.
Yes, none of them wanted to stay in Cuba for an indefinite period of time.
Yeah, they all wanted to stay. They just didn't want to stay for an indefinite period of time, exactly, because they'd made friends.
Absolutely.
That's part of what's so exciting about going on a mission trip. You make friends with people internationally, and those friendships last, well,
forever.
Eternity.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Really neat. So what are your plans like now? Because I'm sure the Quiet Hour didn't just stop doing ministry.
No, we did not. In fact, we're taking this time to be ready so that as soon as travel is lifted, we're able to go. It takes time to plan and prepare a mission trip. And so we're planning and preparing now. We have trips scheduled for January and February and March of this next year. All the way through, we've got about 14 trips scheduled in the next, in 2021. And so we've been spending our time now getting ready to do that. All of the trips that we had scheduled in 2020, of course, had to be postponed and rescheduled. So we worked with our international partners to find out when they would be available. And we're paying close attention, of course, to the travel restrictions and when they're being lifted. Here, a couple weeks ago, they lifted the complete ban on international travel and made it now country-specific, which for us is a step in the right direction.
Yes.
Although they did say most of the countries where we're going are still level 4, which is, basically don't go. Mm-hmm. So
now you have to sort through that and gradually look to see when each of those places opens up.
Yep.
And I'm sure you're praying that the ones you have scheduled for January and early in the year will open soon.
Yes. The interesting thing is that the international partners that we've been working with are really excited about an opportunity that we offered them this year, because we could not go in person. We said we still want evangelism to happen. I mean, that's why we exist, right? So we offered them an extra opportunity to find something that they could do in their culture, in their community, that's evangelistic, that fits within the whole COVID restrictions and regulations. And many of them came up with just really unique and interesting ways to reach people. For example, one of the places where we're going this year is in Philippines. And of course, we're still going to go there next year. But the funds that we offered, they're going to use to purchase 30 low-power radio transmission stations. Mm-hmm. They're mobile. And the people in this area actually get their news and their information by radio. And so they're going to have evangelism series broadcast on these small powered mobile transmitters.
Yes.
In 30 sites that they will do for a month, and then they'll move them someplace else and do them for another month. And we're helping them provide the funding to purchase those mobile transmitter stations. That's a really creative, interesting way
it is.
To do evangelism that actually harkens back to Quiet Hour's beginnings in radio.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is pretty cool.
Really well.
Yeah.
So that means that donations that people have already made to Quiet Hour are certainly still being used this year.
Absolutely.
Proactively for the gospel.
In fact, this week there are evangelism meetings happening in Narok, Kenya, where we had planned to be working together with a group called the Tombi Youth Group, a group of about 20 young people that we've been partnering with for several years. They said, we're so sad that you can't come, but we're ready. Can we go ahead even without you? And we said, yes. So those meetings are actually happening right now. Very exciting to think about that.
That is, it's really neat.
Yeah.
So they're doing it.
COVID can stop travel, COVID can stop social interaction, but nothing can stop the spread of the gospel. Nothing can stop the spread of the gospel.
And that's good news, which
Amen.
I guess is what the gospel means.
Exactly.
Good news.
Yes, yes.
So how can people become involved? I'm sure there are a number of ways, but let's start with let's see, somebody's watching right now and they want to go on one of these trips with Quiet Hour Ministries. How does that happen?
Probably the easiest way to get just general information would be go to our website, qhministries.org, and there's a section for trips, and you can go through and see the trips that we've got planned. We're always putting new trips up as we get the final details worked out. You can also call our office at 1-800-900-9021 and talk with somebody. There's people there who love to talk about mission trips and answer all of your questions. One of the things that I'm really excited about is all of our staff have the opportunity every 2 or 3 years to go on a mission trip themselves. Mm-hmm. And so they're experienced at what it's like to be on a mission trip. So they can answer all your questions, help you figure out the details, all of that.
I think that's a neat aspect of how you have yourselves organized. That it's not that just that there are some people who have to stay here in the U.S. in the office all the time, but they get out there and experience it.
Yeah.
And that would add to their joy and excitement about the whole ministry.
It has completely transformed the atmosphere in the building because I know one of the ladies that I work with does payroll and process accounts payable, right? Mm-hmm. And she says, I'm sending this money, I'm wiring these dollars, internationally. And she said, it just kind of feels like I'm paying bills. It's not much different than, life at home. I pay bills at home too. How's that really special? And then she got to go on a mission trip, and she got to see how it was that those dollars were actually used and the impact that they had in the community and the experience that they had as they shared their faith. And she has a completely different appreciation now for when she sends those dollars internationally.
Yeah, I'm sure. So how do you determine who has the need and where you're going to make the mission trips take place?
That's a great question, Linnell. There are constant stream of requests coming across my desk saying, please, bring a team, send a team. Every place we go, they'd like us to come back another year. The trip to Ukraine, we've been twice now, and we're going a third time. I remember the pastor who was assigned with our team in Ukraine initially was assigned by his conference president to be kind of our liaison. And he said, I don't want to do this. He told us later, I didn't want to do it. I've got stuff going on in my own church. I didn't want to stop and spend time, kind of shepherding some Americans around. Yes. He said, by the end of the trip, he was so excited. He said, you guys have got to come to my church next time you come. And we did. Mm-hmm. So it really is an exciting thing to see happen.
So the requests come to you, basically. Yeah. You're overwhelmed with requests, is
exactly.
kind of what you're telling me. And then you have to see what's feasible.
Yeah. 5 years ago when we were at GC, I had a conference president come to me and say, I have 200 villages with no Adventist presence. Will you come and do evangelism meetings in those villages? 200 villages. Mm-hmm. We were able to do 50. But that's all the resource that we had. So there's more demand.
That's a good lead into. So how do you, how is Quiet Hour Ministries funded? How can people participate?
Quiet Hour is completely funded by donors. We get no support from grants or organizations or from the Adventist Church. There's no offering that's taken to support Quiet Hour. It's 100% supported by donors. And so, if people want to support the ministry and the things that are going on there, yes, check our website, give us a call. We're more than happy to talk with you about ways that we can find something meaningful that your dollars and contribution can do.
Mm-hmm. So people could speak very specifically with you about the kinds of things they're interested in,
yes,
in supporting.
So our mission trips have 5 major components. There's the gospel workers that I already mentioned before and after. There's a children's program that we do. We have a children's program called My Friend Jesus. And it's complete with the felts and the stories and the crafts and everything. There is also the evangelism meetings that are held, there's medical clinics that are done, and there's a construction project. So there's those 5 main areas of ways that people can help.
Mm-hmm. It's broad.
It is. It's kind of holistic mission work. Mm-hmm. And because it is so broad, there's a ton of opportunity for anybody who wants to go. So you can go on a mission trip and not have to preach, not have to lead a children's program. You can be involved in a clinic that happens every day. You can be involved in a construction project that happens every day. Or if you want to preach, we have a sermon series that you can use. All the equipment, all the everything, all the notes and everything. So.
Sounds like something I've got to do with my family sometime.
You should, Linnell. We have families that actually come along and make it a family event. Mm-hmm. I know that there are many who have been tremendously blessed by that. And that's one of the things that I think is so important to us, is helping people from North America experience what evangelism means. In our local churches, yes, there's opportunity to be part of the church program, but that's not the same as sharing your faith with somebody who's never heard about Jesus and doesn't know what that friendship can be like. And I know when I went on my first mission trip, I went to take the gospel to the people who didn't know Jesus, and I was going to be a blessing to them. I came back so blessed, so much more blessed than I could have ever imagined. Mm-hmm. And it changes you. It gives you a passion for evangelism in your own hometown, in your own community. And now I've got neighbors on all three sides,
yes,
that I'm building those relationships so that I can eventually at some point share my faith.
Yes, really neat. Thank you so much, Randy. It's great to talk with you.
Good to see you too, Linnell. Hope to see you on a mission trip soon.
Indeed. And thank you for watching. Stay tuned. I'll be right back. Welcome back. It's time for Station News, and I have an update on the production of Secret Life of the Desert. I was talking with Daniel Biggs, and he said that he's been out in the national grasslands near Redmond, Oregon, and he set up a couple of trail cams there and left them for about a week and then picked them up again so that he could get footage of animals coming to an area where there's a natural spring. And he's only about a third of the way through the footage, and he's already found a number of fascinating creatures, from small mice to big deer. So I think he's really excited about this footage he has, and you're going to be too, as it gets integrated into the Secret Life of the Desert production. So we're really happy about how that production is coming along. And also, I wanted you to know that we're beginning planning for our fall share-a-thon. And the theme of the share-a-thon is going to be peace, something that we all need during challenging times. So your prayers are appreciated as we make our plans for that event, which is going to take place in November. Also, I have some news about the new facility on Wallula Road. We wanted to make sure that the pavement was protected for winter, and we have a new coating over the asphalt there to protect it. And so we're really glad that we're able to keep our facility in good shape as we're getting ready for our interior renovations at the new facility too. And speaking of that, we actually are not able to progress as quickly as we'd like to with those renovation plans unless we have the significant funds we need come in for that project. So you can have a lot to do with how quickly Blue Mountain Broadcasting Association can move to the new place through your gifts specifically for the new facility. And your gifts for the operation of the ministry are also really, really important. Our daily, monthly operation at the station. And I also wanted to let you know that we are continuing to work on our upgrade to high definition and the upgrade to our online streaming service. So all of these are projects that are going on at this current time. And would you please remember our station manager, Lowell Mann, in your prayers too? He's in the midst of the intensive that I was talking about earlier in the program, as he is a student in that master's program. So your prayers for him are appreciated too. I want to thank you for tuning in to This Week from Blue Mountain Broadcasting today and for watching. I'll see you next time.